Robert Kiyosaki is a Japanese-American entrepreneur. He is also the author of the best-selling personal finance book of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. As the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki is known for challenging and changing the views of millions of people around the world regarding money. He is an entrepreneur, educator, and investor. He believes the world needs more entrepreneurs. Robert's views on money and investing often contradict traditional wisdom. As a result, he has gained an international reputation for his candor, irreverence, and courage. He has also become a passionate and steadfast advocate for financial education. In May 2016, Robert Kiyosaki was invited to participate in a lecture event organized by students at the University of California, San Diego. During this event, Robert Kiyosaki delivered a speech titled, "Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. Wealth and Income Inequality is the Greatest Moral Crisis." In the speech, he discussed the power of financial education and its relationship to income inequality. Next, let's enjoy the full speech together. Today's topic is, wealth and income inequality is the greatest moral crisis. I would also say this is today's America, and even a spiritual crisis for the whole world. This gap between the rich and everyone else is reaching a critical point. I believe one of the biggest crises is today's youth. Today's young unemployed will become tomorrow's unemployable. They have lost valuable job training skills. Therefore, I will show some pictures. Because a picture is worth 1,000 words, I will use pictures to show you how this inequality and opportunity inequality is rapidly increasing. The situation in America today is that savers are the losers. You know, most parents tell their children to go to school. But in 1970, when I graduated from school, investing $1 million at a 15% interest rate brought me an annual income of $150,000. At that time, you could live on $150,000. But in 2016, due to something called quantitative easing, Bernanke referred to it as the Greenspan put, investing $1 million at a negative 5 basis points interest rate would cost you $1 million to deposit $1 million. This is how bad our financial system has become. This is one of the reasons for the gap between the rich and the poor. Another thing is that fewer and fewer families are earning middle-class incomes. The middle class is shrinking. Whenever we shop at Walmart, we are sending dollars and job opportunities to China, Pakistan, and all other countries. This is capitalism. When people's incomes decline, they become more dependent. Now the US government tells us that in America. But perhaps poverty has already been defeated. But what is increasing is a sense of entitlement. The government and others should take care of me. This is a moral crisis and a spiritual crisis. I learned in Sunday school, it is more blessed to give than to receive. But today too many people think they should receive. This is another crisis, Social Security. As a Japanese person, we refer to it as, Social Security. But anyway, I have met many people around my age. There are about 75 million baby boomers. We expect the government to take care of us. That is a lot of educated people. This is a crisis. Therefore, in 2002, I published this book, Rich Dad's Prophecy. Robert 4 years later Kiyosaki. The prediction is that a global financial crisis will occur in 2016. Robert T. Kiyosaki. It is now January 2016. RC we are in 2016, key. Robert T. Kiyosaki. You can see it happening. Robert T. Kiyosaki. In the first decade of this century, we have experienced 3 major collapses. The dot-com bubble burst in 2000. Robert T. Kiyosaki. Then came the 2006 real estate subprime collapse. Robert T. Kiyosaki. Then there was the 2008 banking collapse. Robert T. Kiyosaki. The question is, what comes next? Robert T. Kiyosaki 1950. Shaded areas indicate U.S. recessions. https www.macrotrends.net 1319 Dow Jones 100-year historical chart. 1950. They have been talking about the huge crash of 1929. 1950. I tell you, compared to what is coming, that was nothing at all. Head. I am very concerned about our future, our well-being, and our economic situation. Recessions. Shaded areas indicate U.S. recessions. Therefore, today I want to talk about why the rich are getting richer. Business information. My next book is about to be published. But I need to explain. I will explain some industry tips. Why do people like me become richer, while others do not? This is very interesting. This is one of the reasons why the rich get richer. Policy Center. This is Bush's tax cut. Policy Center. This is Bush's tax cut. The largest tax cuts went to the top 0.1%. The largest tax cuts went to the top 0.1%. Thank you, George. Those guys have no morals with updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. However, I am the author of the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. With updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. Today's world. With updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. How many people have read, Rich Dad Poor Dad? DOERTLUNDAD. With updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. Someone has read it. Updates for world. World. Is there anyone here who hasn't read this book? DODERTLUNDADDODETTST. With updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. Alright, there are still some audience members who haven't read it. With updates for today's world and 9 new study session sections. Sections. Glad to see this point actions vivosi. As I mentioned at the presentation, I am a best-selling author, and not the best writer. However, those who have read Rich Dad Poor Dad should know. This is the true story of my two fathers. 28 miles. The story begins when I was 9 years old. In a sugar mill town called Hilo, I raised my hand in 4th grade and asked the teacher, Mrs. Gerald, when will I learn about money? She said, money? Don't you know that the love of money is the root of all evil? Although it wasn't directed at me, but she said, you're here to look for a job. I said, I don't want a job. I just want to be rich. So she said, go ask your dad. This is the origin of Rich Dad Poor Dad. My poor dad was the head of the Hawaii Department of Education, a very smart person with a PhD, graduated from Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University. I went home and asked my dad, hey, Dad, when can we learn about money? He said, never. I asked, why? The government doesn't allow us to teach you that knowledge. I said, that's interesting. So he said, if you want to be rich, go find your best friend's father. He is an entrepreneur. One day you will become a very wealthy person. This is where the story of Rich Dad Poor Dad begins. When I was 9, I went to Rich Dad's office. He is an entrepreneur. He started teaching me and his son why the rich become richer. This is the beginning of my financial education. So I co-wrote this book with him in 1997. So far, this book has sold about 41 million copies worldwide in 50 languages. 41 million copies. Let me briefly introduce my background. I'm not looking for applause. But anyway, from Hilo, Hawaii to New York City, my academic performance was not great. I was a student with an average grade of C-, but being the son of the head of the education department wasn't easy either. So, I received 2 congressional nominations. One was to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. The other was to the United States Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York. So I chose New York, because graduates here earn some of the highest salaries in the world. Most of us had starting salaries of about $100,000 a year. That was in 1965. It was pretty good back then. It may not seem like much now, but it was good at the time. Then after I graduated, I found a job. I worked as a third mate on a tanker for Standard Oil. I traveled around the world. It was a great job, except for one thing. The Vietnam War was still going on. My moral conscience was a bit troubled. I thought, maybe I should go to war. So first joined the Marine Corps. My salary dropped from about $6,000 a month to $200. I served as a Marine Corps lieutenant. It was a great decision. I did flight training in Pensacola, Florida. Then I went to the nearby Pendleton camp. Straight to Vietnam. That was an amazing experience. First, love the Marine Corps. I love the people I work with. It's a bond between brothers. It's very spiritually meaningful. When I came back, my business career began. That was my first business. The Surfer Wallet business. Everyone thought, yes, when you start to succeed, life gets easier. But it's not. Success is expensive. I started selling these wallets. Finally achieved success. I spent more time raising funds to buy more inventory. This way, I could sell more. This was a great learning experience. I learned to make a lot of money by selling wallets. But my life changed when I met this man. Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller changed everything. Dr. Fuller is known for this architecture. He is regarded as a futurist and a kind genius. This is a geodesic dome built for the 1967 Montreal World Expo. In 1967, I took a ride from New York City all the way to Montreal to see this dome. It was a shocking experience. I never thought I would meet this great genius. You know, John Denver called him the kindest genius on earth. In summary, in 1981, I had the opportunity to learn with him in Kirkwood, California. We spent 5 days near Lake Tahoe. I made a mistake. I was sitting next to him, and he was sitting right next to me. It was an event called the Future Business Seminar. He sat next to me and asked, "Robert, what is your life's mission?" I said, "Oh, it's to become wealthy." Wrong answer. He scolded me. He said, "Robert, this is a waste of a good mind." He said, "Why don't you do something that changes the world?" I said, "Change the world? I just want to become wealthy." In the end, I understood, as he said. I didn't come here for myself. I am here to serve everyone. Once I realized how greedy I was. This is a wonderful spiritual liberation. Then I studied with him for 3 years. Every time he asked himself the same question. What can I do? I am just a small person. What can I do? I am just a small person. He is also very insignificant. So I ask all of you, what can you do? In many ways, we are just small people. So I studied with him 3 times. In 1981, 1982, and 1983. Then he passed away on July 1st, 1983. He left behind this book, titled, The Greed of Giants. Heist. This is a book about how super rich people exploit us, cash heist. He is an expert in mathematics, science, art, and design, cash heist. He is an architect. I read about the greed of giants, and understood it. So, at that moment, I said, what can I do? I am just a small person. At that moment, I decided I would confront the greed of giants. For those curious about what giant greed is, you might have noticed the collapses we just experienced. We were rescued, the rich were rescued. I tell you, ladies first, when President Paulson stood there saying it was a mistake, that we had to save the economy, that was a lie. I hesitated to tell you, it was a lie. They rescued the rich. This was part of a business plan, it has been happening. Ladies and gentlemen, I say, in 1983, I had to do something. As a small player, I wanted to challenge the biggest bank, the Federal Reserve Bank. Although it is neither a bank, nor part of the federal government, nor has reserves, nor is it an American institution. You understand, right? I can challenge Wall Street, I can challenge the government. I can also challenge the school system. You see, ladies and gentlemen, these collapses, these bailouts are not coincidental. Similarly, the lack of financial education in schools is not coincidental either. But my research shows that since 1983, this has been premeditated, just like before the American Civil War. Just as it was illegal to educate slaves, we cannot learn about money in school. When I realized this, I said okay, it was time for me to start my life and begin teaching. I became very much like my rich dad and a poor dad. I started teaching. Not too far from here. My wife and I were homeless in San Diego. I tried my best to teach, because we couldn't get into the school system, and no one wanted to listen to us. Anyway, that's how it all started. So I'm going to tell you what real financial education is. Financial education is not about saving money, not about long-term investing in the stock market, not about getting out of debt, but the exact opposite. So, my financial education began with Monopoly. We all know the formula. 4 green houses and 1 red hotel. So from the time I was 9 until about 20, I played Monopoly with my rich dad and his son. That's how I learned to become a wealthy person. The reason is that this is the learning pyramid. Doing a dramatic presentation simulating the real experience. Doing learning cog. And it says this is how humans design learning. Doing the real thing https www.researchgate.net. Please note, the worst way to learn is by reading. The second worst way is by listening to lectures. Doing the real thing https www.researchgate.net. Let's take a look at those boring teachers. Doing the real thing https www.researchgate.net. That's why I never go to school. Doing the real thing https www. But the second best way is also called simulation. Simulation is where you can make mistakes. You get to make mistakes over and over again. You just keep making mistakes. Humans learn through making mistakes. Except in school. We are considered stupid when we make mistakes. In business, you get fired for making a mistake. Making a mistake in business means you fail. So a person has to find a place that tolerates mistakes. For scientists, like Edison, this place is the laboratory. I learned a lot because I made many mistakes while playing Monopoly. That's how I learned so much. Today I'm playing Monopoly in real life. My wife and I have over 10,000 properties. Several hotels, golf courses and oil wells. But that's just a game. Once you learn through playing games. Simulation is the way you learn. So you practice, 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 practice. You make mistake after mistake, just like a golfer, making mistake after mistake, and then they become professional players. But many people are not wealthy. It's because they think mistakes make you stupid. This is a moral. A baby cannot learn to walk if it doesn't fall. If you don't fall off the bike, you won't learn to ride a bike. This is where our education system fails. The reason I like the military is because they teach us to make mistakes over and over again. Every day when we fly, we practice emergency procedures. Every day I shut down the engine. I fly my plane without the engine running. This is the real thing I'm doing. I crashed in Vietnam 3 times. If it weren't for practicing crashes, I wouldn't be here today. My 5 crew members made it home safely. So after Dr. Fuller, also known as Buck, scolded me, I thought, what can I do? I'm just a small fry. My wife and I created this board game called Cash Flow. But the key here is the cash flow game. This is called a financial statement. Add the financial statement to Monopoly, and you have cash flow. So the beauty of the cash flow game is that today we have thousands of cash flow game clubs around the world. People teach each other. We don't need to go to school and get rid of student loan debt. You have to go to school to become a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. But you don't have to go to school to become wealthy. So now I start asking everyone the question that Dr. Fuller asked me back then. I began to empower people around the world, every day through different languages. People are teaching each other the same education my rich dad taught me. Total liabilities. This is a financial statement. Net worth. It includes income, expenses, and liabilities. The wonderful thing here is that this is also your report card when you leave school. Total liabilities net worth. My bank never asks about my average grades or which school I attended. Total monthly payments far right. Net worth. My bank wants to see my financial statements. Total monthly payments for net worth. The reason most people can't get loans is that they don't have financial statements. Even college graduates. They leave school not even knowing what a financial statement is. The reason I can borrow hundreds of millions of dollars is because I have a strong financial statement. This is financial literacy. This chart is very simple. Poor dad always said to go to school, get a high-paying job. The problem with education is that they teach you to be an employee. Rich Dad taught me to be an entrepreneur and acquire assets. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Assets are very simple. You can plant an apple seed. Apple seeds grow into a tree, yielding apples. You sell the apples and reinvest the profits. Continuously build orchards. This is how you become wealthy. I have a friend who, when he was in high school, his grandmother gave him some chickens, and those chickens laid eggs. He sold the eggs and reinvested. When he was 45 years old, I think he sold his business. He used to sell 10 million eggs a day to Costco and Walmart. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to build assets. Just buy a few chickens, and that's it. It's a bit interesting, you know, really. So you need to recognize the power of words. Financial literacy starts with words. Because words affect your brain. Just like my poor dad used to say, I can't afford it. You know, in Sunday school I learned, the word becomes flesh. Every time you say you can't afford it, say you're poor. Say you're a failure, say you can't do something. Say you're helpless, that the government should take care of you. It's disgusting. Rich Dad taught me how to afford it. So when I had nothing, my wife and I kept thinking, how can I afford it? Soon your mind will open up. And wisdom will follow. The most important vocabulary about money consists of just 4 words. Income, assets, liabilities, cash flow. That's it. This is financial literacy. It tells you about income, assets, liabilities, and cash flow. You basically understand these 4 words. Then you can expand your vocabulary. Money has a language, but it's not taught in school. Schools teach you to have a stable job rather than to become an entrepreneur. You know, looking for a stable job. Instead of pursuing financial freedom, you shouldn't think that someone should take care of you. You should say, I want to take care of others. As an entrepreneur, I have thousands of employees. That is my job. My job is to create other jobs, to help them live stable lives. So first is assets, second is liabilities. Cash flow. These liabilities. This is why the poor and middle class are poor. It's because they think their house is an asset. If you've read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I said a few things. People who save money are losers. Your house is not an asset. This was proposed in 1997. In 2007, the subprime mortgage market collapsed. Millions of people around the world have discovered that their houses are 3 types of liabilities. Look, if you use the wrong words to describe the wrong problem, you will always be foolish and poor. So don't call liabilities assets. This is why so many people go bankrupt. They use the wrong words. Word made flesh. B. Financial literacy. Change your words, change your life. Never say you can't afford it. Ask yourself, how can I afford it? Strive to acquire assets, not liabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have thousands of cash flow game clubs around the world. People are teaching each other. You don't have to go to school to learn how to become wealthy. So the question is, as Buckminster Fuller asked me, what can I do? I am just a small person. I stopped making wallets and started living rationally. My wife and I created this casual board game. Today, the whole world is playing it. Every day, thousands of people are self-learning. This is how you change the world. You change your life. So the best news is that words are free. Changing the world doesn't require millions of dollars. It just requires changing the words. Thank you very much. The above is Robert Kiyosaki's speech titled, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. Thank you for your attention. Looking forward to meeting you at the next speech.